So welcome everyone to our Facebook Live with writer, producer, Roger, director. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And well, Joy, maybe you want to give a little history first about how we started, about our group?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Joy Choden, and I'm the founder of the Moonlighting Reunion and DVD campaigns. And we created a fanzine. Christy Taylor created a fanzine, and we interviewed many talented people from the show: actors, directors, writers, producers like Roger here. And he actually did an interview for us years ago that's in our fanzine that you can read on moonlighting21.com. And Diana is a very big part of, how the campaigns really move forward as well. And she has been a Moonlighting fan for many years, and she was a television advertiser. And she, she really understood the entertainment business. And she was a huge help, and a huge reason why we have the DVDs that we have from Moonlighting. So thank you so much, Diana.
You're welcome. Thank you. Great. You and Chrissy had a great idea. So just these questions that we're going to be asking were asked and supplied by the passionate fans and members in our group. So the first question, Roger, will be, first of all, tell us how you became part of the writing staff of Moonlighting.
Well, Moonlighting had they had done a few episodes in what technically would be called the first season, and I was extremely lucky to be thrown in the path of Glenn's rocket ship, and I think anyone. I mean, I remember watching the pilot, and if you watch the pilot, it just blew your mind how brilliant it was. How funny it was, how great it was. And so my agent at the time, who knew Glenn very well, who also was working at MTM at that point, which is where I was working at Hill Street Blues. And Glenn had just recently passed through there, working at Remington Steel, and was now starting the show Moonlighting. So Beth Uffner, the great agent, sort of, put my name forward. And I remember sitting in, it was probably late May of what it's technically speaking, the beginning of the second season, sitting in Glenn's office at Fox with Glenn sitting there. And I remember he got a phone call from ABC, and I realized at that point that, oh, this is not a sure thing. I mean, I don't know if it had been officially put on the schedule yet, because at that point, I think like Aaron Spelling basically was like, what should we do with our schedule, Mr. Spelling? Well, I have a show I want to put here or there. But anyway, the numbers were so good that that lane had to be opened up for Glenn and Moonlighting. And so I was fortunate enough to be hired by Glenn, to my great fortune. Yeah, that's how I first wound up sitting there and working with Glenn. And I'll just say it's quite a thing to watch Glenn Caron. We worked with old-fashioned implements in those days. We were a little bit beyond spears and rocks, but we had things like typewriters. And I remember Glenn rolling up a piece of paper into his typewriter and just hitting fade in, That Glenn has such an organized brain and has this talent that it could just come out of him onto the typewriter, which was not necessarily the background that I had most recently come from. But anyway, those are my early experiences that late spring of that year, sitting with Glenn and getting down to work. And so that's my answer to that question. I don't know if it's a good answer or not, but there you are.
Well, in our interview back in 2003, you told us that Glenn went to you for more outlandish or maybe bent storylines. And an example would be Lady in Iron Mask and Atlas Belch, which we will watch tonight.
Yeah, great.
Why is that?
Wow. I think Glenn came up with a pretty good adjective, as he comes up with the right words. So he called me bent. Maybe after I submitted the script to the Lady in the Iron Mask, and was I remember writing that and thinking I'm going to be fired. He's going to read this. He is going to kick my ass out of the office. Bingo. Should I even hand this in? I mean, the image of 3 people chasing around in a hotel, all in veils and black. I thought, well, how's it going to end? How's this episode going to end? Who's going to solve it? What's going to happen? And as the image came into my head, like, that is so weird and queer and creepy, but yet somehow oddly burlesquely funny.
Yeah.
I thought, I don't know, maybe that I'll type that out. And I might have even have whispered at some point crossing Glenn's path in the office, well, I think I might try to do it this way. And he probably was off to something else. He said, yeah, go ahead. Because one of Glenn's favorite phrases was, it's only paper. And so anyway, I wrote that, and it was uniquely bizarre, I think. And to watch it now is really quite stunning and fun. And I think it moved the needle in a good direction, because it was silly and fun, and a little bit of a staple, that kind of a chase sequence, which is always a good staple part of Moonlighting. And but it was, I think, after that anyway, Glenn applied that sort of moniker to me. You're bent, and I think it's okay. I'll take it. Bent is okay.
I think it's the funniest chase sequence in the whole show.
Yeah,
yeah.
Bizarre, isn't it? It's so bizarre. See these people running around and sliding around. It's very crazy. I think that was a really cool thing to turn on TV and have that happen.
Yeah, and Cybill had competition between Bruce and Dennis Christopher in that black dress.
Was it your suggestion to use the William Tell overture with the music?
No, I don't think so. I think, that it had to come from, it probably came. I mean, it's not the most extraordinary piece of music to apply to a piece of funny rapid fire burlesque like that, but probably it was Glenn or Jay Daniel or Artie Mandelberg probably suggested something like that. I don't know who it was, but it again, it added to the wacky factor of it, didn't it? Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah. Fun. It was fun.
And back then, I have to say, when I worked as a media buyer, I received a newsletter from ABC, and one of the storylines that they said that Moonlighting was working on had to do with a monster, and I think it was Godzilla inspired. And I remember some talk going around back then about an episode with Maggie and David and Godzilla. Is that an episode you pitched? Is that one of your?
Godzilla was never far from my mind, even after all these years. And I could say, I don't know if anyone out there listening to this saw Godzilla -1, which was recently in the theaters. Mm-hmm. It's like the 35th or 36th edition of Godzilla movies. But I'm not a fan of Godzilla movies, but I will plug this movie because anyway, it's really, they had it in color. They re-released it in black and white for a week. It was very good. But I can't say as much of a fan of Godzilla as I might be and continue to be, that I pitched that thing. The thing with Glenn was that he always had sort of circling in his brain we got to do a boxing show, we got to do this or that kind of show, tackle that kind of a subject. So it's not that hard to believe that maybe Glenn would have at some point said, we're going to do some kind of Maddie and David against the destruction of the world kind of a show. I don't know. Anyway, I can't take credit. I can't take credit for not pitching a Godzilla episode.
Okay. And do you remember any other storylines that were pitched that were never made?
One that was there was one that, I'm going to say, I think that were never made. There was one that Glenn never wanted to make, and that was sort of, he wanted to never directly hit on Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, those romantic comedies. I mean, I'm forgetting the name of the Garson Kane and
Adam's Rib.
Yeah, he never wanted to do that. So anytime anyone said, let's do Adam's Rib, it would be like a sure no. It was like an obvious pitch, but it was a sure no. It was a swing and a miss every time. That was one that I don't think, that would be one I would say.
Okay, and the next question a fan asked is, how did you manage to adapt your writing to the notorious Moonlighting banter? And how much of it was written by the respective writers, and how much of it was Glenn's share?
It was great to write for Moonlighting. Really a treat, because you could sort of how should I put it? You could unbutton your shirt button and take off your suspenders and really let something rip and let something roll. And Glenn's his besides saying it's only paper, Glenn's attitude usually was, if you pitched something to him and he went, I've never seen that, that was good. He wanted to do stuff that was just out of the box, extraordinary, never before seen or done in a way. And so for a writer to just sort of be able to let something go, let something rip, make all kinds of illusions. And then, of course, furthermore, to have an actor like Bruce Willis just, doing it, bam, 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 and Cybill back and forth. So, it's not like you were ever delivering in writing anything that they couldn't do, which is really, really a cool thing, because when in the end, it's the actors who leave the final factor. They're the artists in the end, and so you can provide what you can provide, but if they can't express it, then you've got to go back and come up with something different that lets them express it the best way they know how. And it was never really the case with Bruce and Cybill that they couldn't do it or get it or achieve it. They always could. So that also made things good when you were writing for it. And as I say, what could be nicer than to be writing scenes with all this, all the content, the emotional contours that were involved in every scene, and all the elements of the romantic tango that was going on, as well as a case, as well as being funny and making wisecracks about it the whole time. What could be better than that? Pretty good.
Yeah, watching it now, it's like, I was a young adult. We have a lot of members here who are actually children watching it, but so many layers now. You see so much. I mean, every rewatch, you catch something else. So, and fantastic acting by everyone.
But I should also say this: when I was thinking about this, because I knew I was going to be yapping my mouth off, that Glenn. I'll say something. As a writer, you want to think that everything that you wrote is final and perfect, and which when you hand it in, it is. But when it came to the stage, or it came out of Glenn's typewriter in the end, was it better? Oh yeah, definitely better. Glenn, he sang the song, so it was. We in a way, and I'm not, we were partners and participants in getting the show where it needed to be to satisfy Glenn and this incredible conception that he came up with. And I don't know if this is an apt thing to say, but in a way, he sang the original version of this amazing hit to not Al Jarreau, but I'm speaking metaphorically. Glenn, sang this, and we all covered it, so to speak, as if we were singing a song that he'd already done. So we did the best of our abilities, and most times it was pretty cool. Delivered stuff that was good to go for Glenn, or he'd give it a run through his typewriter, and always always great.
Well, you had a wonderful bunch of writers, team of writers supporting Glenn. And one of the questions someone asked was that the earlier Moonlighting scripts seemed to have been credited only one or two writers, and then later on replaced by a longer list of collaborators. So did the writing become more collaborative? I would think so as it went on.
Yeah, it did, because we were so under the gun, to deliver episodes, and sometimes you have to you got to knock out a script. And I had come from MTM and working at Hill Street Blues, where there were lots of, you would call them, say, interlarded storylines going on. So in a sense, if everyone on the writing staff knew what the story was, knew the beat sheet, knew the outline, you could, if you had a well-trained flight crew, and you needed to have this script done in a day or two, you could hand out pieces of it and get a draft together that you could polish. That made for that was an efficiency. So when we were in a crunch type period, we started having to kind of work. We were always working collaboratively, but sometimes script wise and accrediting them, it came down to sort of apportioning responsibilities for the teleplay or the story or whatnot. But it was it got to be more collaborative. Yeah, I think probably just to speed the process up, because we were just desperately trying to make shows.
So you would say that writing for Moonlighting was easier or more difficult to write?
Well, in a way, I would say easier is a hard. You could say it was easier because other shows probably made you hew to a stricter tenor of the scene. The scene had to be a certain thing to fit in with a police procedural or something like that, or a medical show. You couldn't roam far afield. Whereas, you could say, in a sense, easier, writing for Moonlighting, because you could have DePesto saying a poem in the scene. You could have some sort of a digression that came back to a joke as a button on the scene. But in the end, although you might have a little bit more of a leash to sort of experiment or range a little bit in the scene that you were writing, it had to have an intent, had to have a purpose, had to have a plot point to it. And in the end, it had to be good, had to satisfy Glenn.
Okay, we're coming to a major plot point. Joy, you want to ask the next question, number 7?
Sure. When casting the role of Sam in season 3, was Mark Harmon your top choice for the role? And what other actors were being strongly considered? Did Cybill and Bruce have a say on who was going to be casted for that very important character?
Pivotal, yeah.
Well, obviously that was really important. I mean, I don't know what kind of back channel conversations went on, but you might remember it was around that time. I mean, Mark had appeared on Saint Elsewhere, TV show that MTM had done, and was a striking success on it. And I think it was around the same time that he got voted, the sexiest guy alive or something like that.
Yeah,
so
magazine.
It was well, we'll get to this at some point probably, but you don't want to have to necessarily explain why someone is with someone or attracted to someone necessarily. That's sort of you put that out there, and the audience either gets it or it doesn't get it. and what is there to get about the fact of Mark Harmon being attracted to Mark Harmon, so, and he seemed like a good, equally magnetic pole to fend with Bruce, and I think they worked really well together. So I think he was a perfect choice for it, and my God, he was great in it, and look what else he went on to do, and yeah, he was
I'm
great.
curious, did Bruce or Cybill have a say on that he was cast? Like, we're going to go with Mark Harmon. Are you okay with that? Did they have?
I would tend to think so.
Mhm.
I mean, stay at a part like that. I don't think you just want to have someone show up on in makeup, with such an important arc and get introduced. So I've got to assume, without knowing for sure, you can't spring big surprises like that on your actors. You gotta sort of test it out with them. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Get a read from them. They may have a comment to make about that. I can work with that person, or I might have some difficulty. You really, really want to get their input,
Mhm.
not necessarily, but you want to have a conversation. You want to have a back and forth. What do you think about this? So I'm sure that there was a back and forth about that, and I thought it was a good choice, and they had some great scenes.
Yeah.
To Mark, and there was a great fight they had down in the parking garage, and
Mhm.
at some point, and so it was. Mark was very tolerant, I think, of Bruce kind of shoving his mutt in the way there of between what Mark was trying to accomplish with Matty Hayes. Anyway, he was perfect.
Hey,
Yeah.
Joy, go ahead.
Yeah, that scene with the restaurant was a great scene between the three of them.
Yeah, Sam and Dave. Yeah.
Yeah, Sam and Dave.
Yeah. I mean, and look, Bruce was, so they were great at at bringing the viewers and the audience to a certain point. Like that scene, I think you're talking about the scene where he was going to tell her that he loves her,
Yep.
and he never gets to it, and you could see it just bedeviling him, and the difficulty of trying to get that out, and just in that one instant, the opportunity sort of is lost, and they were so good, and I think one of the nice things about the show was, you want to get these moments across to viewers, and it makes them cling to the show. And a good TV series like that at that point in time, I mean, it peaked all the time. There were peaks in their relationship, and valleys, and like I say, the contour and the slope of it was constantly changing back and forth, and that was, I think, was a great allure for the viewers, and obviously it was a great allure for the viewers, because we all developed such an attachment to them. What was it going to become of them? And just doing a little bit of. It's funny to, I've just been doing some reviewing, and some of the little sleight of hand and little tricks that Glenn came up with in terms of like acknowledging. We haven't spoken. Well, we'll get to this. I'm sure you'll ask me about it, but the not only did the show become a hit, but Glenn was aware that people were watching. It could break the fourth wall. That he knew that everyone knew that it was a hit, and we could have fun with it, which I think is that's reflecting on that. That's not so easy to do, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We become
and
emotionally involved for sure, the audience.
Curtis also he really was kind of the comic relief with the seriousness as well.
I mean, what can you say? He is a brilliant actor. He hits every note. He is hilarious. He's in the Ass Kissers Hall of Fame, isn't he? Nobody. Try to think who kissed ass for as long and as successfully and with so much ardor and conviction, as Bert Viola. I mean, he worshipped Mr. Addison, and it was to have him there. Of course, there was necessities the mother of Bert Viola in a way because the actors needed to have a little bit of a downtime.
Yeah.
They cover every scene, and most other. Again, I'm going back to that era, but most other shows, and it's pretty much the case today. Someone has an A storyline, a B storyline, or whatever. It's threaded through, back and forth. And the days that you're not seeing them on the TV screen, they're not working. Probably, they're on call, but they may not be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. But Bruce and Cybill had to be there every day, and that we needed to figure out. Once in a while, we would do the pesto episode, and Elise is magical and so completely charming. And getting back to her, she and Curtis held the screen. No, yeah, Bruce, we want to see people go. I want to see Bruce and Cybill. But when Curtis was wooing Agnes, and crawling up on her desk, I'm forgetting which particular scene that was, but it was a really, really beautiful scene where they're finally interrupted as they draw closer and closer together. Curtis and Elise were just great, and there was never a time. I mean, I loved. I'm going on about Curtis, but when he and when he and Bruce wound up in the hot tub after they went out and picked up some girls. That sequence of scenes is just it's killer fun. It's just hilarious. Curtis, boy, everyone that you look back at it, everyone that did it, it was a game, right? Everyone was great. All the actors, even the guest stars. How could they be any better than that? Like someone like Eva Marie Saint, and Robert Webber as Cybill's parents. But anyway, yes, Curtis, Bert Viola, boy, he loved Bluemoon, didn't he? No one was a more dedicated employee than Bert Viola. He's still working there. Did you know that? I'll bet you didn't know that. Bert Viola is still in the office. He's waiting. He's waiting for the door to unlock, for everyone to come back in. He's a dedicated employee. Very, very dedicated.
But when David Addison was stuck in the prison, he became a bit of a tyrant at the office.
Well, he could
that way.
That was part of his charm,
Yeah.
He get carried away a little bit with enthusiasm. That's what made him so endearing. And he would get to a point usually where he would sort of stop and think for a second, look in the mirror, so to speak, and go, I think I better just dial it back a little bit. When he was snapping the whip around there, and when he sinks to his knees in an empty office. How heartfelt. Sad. Right? And it I'm just in a way it helped support whatever the structure of he believed in the Bluemoon Detective Agency so much. Well, I do too. I mean, if he could, I did. Yeah.
Okay, now, Joy, you want to do the next question? Okay. Oh, we lost you. Can't hear you.
Me?
No, can't hear Joy.
Sorry, I had it muted. I apologize. Speaking of Bert, he's the one who spilled the beans to David that Maddie was pregnant.
Yeah.
So, why was Maddie so insistent that Sam was the father of the baby? Why did she never seem to acknowledge that it could be David's when it turns out it was David's?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had the answer here in my pocket before. I was brushing my teeth, and then I got on this. I've lost the answer to that. I don't know how that could be, but it's a look. It's a good question. There were a lot of obviously during that sequence of events. So many things were flashing forward and backward in Maddie's mind. Probably was not necessarily the rightest thing for her to be saying. But seriously, I can't exactly answer why that would be. That seems a little unfair, doesn't it?
Okay. Well, what about the reason Maddie married Walter? Everybody needs to know the answer to that.
I know everyone needs to know the answer to that. And I am going to tell you and fail to tell you at the same time. No, I'm going to say, well, look, obviously this is a very controversial situation. And I think it was a little bit of it was a leap that seemed worth an effort to get us in another place.
Mm-hmm.
And really wonderful acting, and Dennis Dugan, wonderful actor, and Cybill was so great all the time, especially in that whole sequence. I tried to, I knew you were going to ask this question. I tried to familiarize myself, and I thought, well, all I can say is a lot of things can happen on the train ride, and I think probably the predicate in a way was that maybe that such a thing could happen on a train ride, but some people would say it was not the most advantageous story choice to make. But and I can't really answer. I think she wanted resolution. She wanted something to stop something just pecking at her and preying on her. She just wanted some comfort, and I think in a way he provided that. That's the best I can do. Does that sound like a good answer, or no? Bad answer.
I'm thinking. I think based on the feedback that we get on our Facebook group, I think she was just trying to resist David so much. Yeah. And she just threw Walter would be an obstacle. She wanted to deny the fact that it was his baby. And maybe there was good, like little soap opera, drama element added to the series.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But the good news, he left. Walter was gone. Yeah. So what was the plan for Maddie and David after Walter left?
Well, we were trying to just continue to steer. We were trying to steer them constantly into different geographies to explore their relationship, and that's constantly what we were trying to do. Whether or not we knew what the ultimate resolution or future of that might be, I don't know. I thought to myself, well, maybe it's now 40 years later, and she got married to some rich guy, and they meet up again they cross paths again. You know, I'm not going to say outside the Plaza Hotel, but someplace like somewhere, in Paris or something like that for one day. I don't know what ultimately the absolutely nailed down plan for them was. We were dealing with some challenges during that period of time with the show, and we confronted them and solved them, and as well as we could. And some of those episodes, I think, where she was in Chicago, where we were shooting different storylines, that was not so easy to do. And then to reset the thing after she got back, we were in the process of trying to foresee what the future was. But now we had a little bit of a thing to contend with there.
Jeffrey and Ron Osborne had told us that there was more of a different direction that they were going to, the writers were thinking of going, and Glenn was thinking of going in if Cybill had probably hadn't gotten pregnant, and they didn't have to write her off the show. Do you know what that would have looked like if Maddie and David had tried with more for a relationship together? Do you have any idea what that was, like what that kind of storyline would have looked like? Did you have any idea what Glenn was thinking at all?
Well, I think it would have. I think it would have gone more or less over the same rocky terrain that it had been, and opening a couple new doors and looking at this and looking at that and throwing in some new challenges and elements. But yes, then Cybill got pregnant, and which is not easy for anyone to deal with. Most of all her. I mean, I would be in her trailer sometimes, and she was nursing 2 kids, right? And so how exhausting is that? How depleting is that? And then you have to get out and get on the stage and be Maddie Hayes again. I think it was a very, very challenging situation for her, but I never I never thought. I thought, God bless you. You're pregnant. You want to have children. You're having children. I thought it was just sort of a natural thing that God bless her. And had she not gotten pregnant, I think.
So you think?
Go on. I don't begrudge her at all. Let me just say.
Yeah. We lost the feed for a second. So you think that you're saying that Glenn would have thrown some challenges in front of them, even if they had tried to have a relationship, if you guys hadn't written her off to go to Chicago?
Absolutely. There would have been hurdles and bumps in the road and potholes and ditches and, everything else in the way to see how they dealt with it, because that's really what I think kind of the show was. Let's throw this at them and see how they deal with it. He'll react one way, she'll react another way. Let's have this thing happen, see how they react. Let's have this case come in and pose this kind of an issue. So it was always about feeding that relationship. Which way is it going to go now? Who's going to feel this way? Who's going to come to the brink of wanting to admit how they feel about the other person? Who's going to swallow their tongue at the worst, the most inopportune time? Who's going to make one little misstep? Who's going to be misconstrued at some point because of what they said or what they did or what they heard someone they thought say about them? So all of that stuff would have would have happened, and maybe we would have even had a Godzilla episode. I don't know, but you know,
Well, a lot of the cases, especially in the Sandmark, really was, mirrored Maddie and David's relationship a lot,
yeah,
so there would probably be more of that, right?
yes, yeah. Well, you wanted you wanted things to mirror their relationship, or you wanted things to coincide, or brush up against, or combust with what was going on in their own personal life or professional life, like with that episode Atlas Belched. It happened to be an episode where, um, your viewers are probably too young, but to remember this, there used to be a thing. We didn't have our contact list on our iPhone. We didn't have a contact list on our laptop. Our contact list consisted of written down little cardboard cards that fit on a big wheel that rolled around, that contained all the people that you knew or you might be interested in calling, or the people who would somehow wheedle their way into your work life or personal life. And I remember that I once upon a time had read a story about a guy named David Rockefeller, one of the Rockefeller. He used to be the former governor of New York, Nelson, and former vice president, Nelson Rockefeller's brother. And David Rockefeller worked at some big bank in like Chase Manhattan or something. He was a mega tycoon. And I remember reading a story about how he had a Rolodex that was so big it sat in two giant drums, must have been 2 tons each, on the floor in his office, and he had 2 assistants tending to his Rolodex all the time. And that sort of sparked the idea of someone losing their Rolodex. Again, a phrase that no one really understands what that means these days. But to construct the story so that uh, um, Markland Baker's Phil West's pickle was knocked up into David's challenge because Maddie had just told him that she was going to sell the business to Lou LaSalle, and I always liked the name Lou LaSalle. And so he found himself in that bar in the same, as he says ultimately to Phil West. I'm not different from you in this particular circumstance, and that sort of a thing, exploring that and having them work on those kinds of issues was always kind of what we aimed to do, and so that would have been, issues of trust, loyalty, love, not love, commitment were always, what does love mean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All that kind of thing were always being played out in cases, et cetera.
What was the plan for Maddie and David's relationship after Walter left?
The plan for them when Walter left, figure out a way forward. They were going to have to do that.
Well, in season 5, it started off with the loss of baby Hayes. So how did, when that idea was floating around the writer's room, or Glenn, how did you all feel about that one, that storyline?
Well, that was a difficult thing. I don't know that I was working on the show at that point. Not that I would have necessarily done anything different. You always had to try to go to kind of unexplored, challenging territory, which was again, getting back to Glenn's taste. It was always, let's try to do something that's different. Now, sometimes you try to do something that's different. Sometimes Glenn would always say, I've never seen that before. Well, sometimes there's stuff that you've never seen before, and there's a good reason why you've never seen it before. It ain't something that you want to see. So there were a few things over the course of the series that were searches and tests of what we could do or accomplish, and that was the challenge in that last in season 5.
And
I didn't answer your question. Did I answer your question? Yes or no?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If-
Going back to the end of season 4, in the episode Flesh Made Word, that's the last episode of season 4, Maddie openly wanted David back, and they seemed to work it out between Yuck in the Hard Place in season 5. It was all thrown out the window. Can you tell us why? So basically, they worked it out at the end, the last episode of season 4, but then, like, it seemed like their relationship was just kind of floating around.
Yeah, season 5 was like you weren't sure if they were working on their relationship or they were like friends with benefits. We didn't really know what was going on in season 5.
Yeah.
Well,
or pals. Pals is the other word. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you always look. You're always trying to give yourself a place to get to. So, which is why there were these stops and starts and resets and refreshes, and you would leave thinking and feeling one thing about where something was at, and only to pick it up again and start in a slightly different place, try to explain why it was in a different place, and then move it forward back toward this this place where they could again reapproach the notion of being together. And that was, I think, probably the reason for that.
Okay. And
didn't answer the question, eh? Yes or no?
It kind of leads into the introduction of Annie. What was the point of bringing Annie in season 5?
Well, I can't specifically answer that because I think I had already taken my Rolodexes home with me at that point. So I don't know if I can answer that particular question. That everyone. I don't know. I plain and simple. I don't know the answer to that question.
It was probably to kind of similar with bringing Sam into the picture. So maybe Annie was a way to bring David and Maddie later on.
I think it was always kind of this kabuki, or this kind of dance that you were trying to kind of rewrite and recompose, rearrange somehow so that you could refashion what was the sort of this original attraction and get them back to that peak again before inevitably something would fall apart.
Were you happy with the ending of the show? How would you have ended the David and Maddie story? What would you have changed in the series if you could have? The ending, with the way the show ended.
I'm going to say again, I can't really say there because I didn't have boots on the ground at that point. And no one was I wasn't in the business of being asked what I would do at that point. So I have to plead ignorance to that. Sometimes there was a one period of time when Glenn was in season 4. We had long discussions with Glenn about what he, in broad strokes, wanted to see in certain episodes and character arcs, which he was going to be in Chicago. And so there was that in place, even though Glenn sometimes was not necessarily physically there because he was shooting a movie, right? But you could always bounce stuff off him now. But no one bounced nothing off me as far as season 5 is concerned, and I don't even know if anyone. But you got to trust that tremendously talented, heartfelt people with a great loyalty to the show and an understanding of the emotional investment that so many people had in the show were trying to do their best to somehow land the plane. And I've mentioned this here or there that it was 7:00 in the evening on a Tuesday night when we found out that in that episode, I think that Maddie had gotten married, right? And it was 7:00 in the office at Fox, and most everyone had gone home. And all of a sudden, the phone started ringing. I mean, it was nuts. Every phone in the office was ringing, and I don't know how they got the number, but people were calling. How did that happen? Why'd you do that? And that was just one sign of how strongly the show was cared for by the audience, and that upset some people. But going back to the kinds of wonderful magic that Glenn would come up with sort of on the fly if we were 5 minutes short, or if we hadn't delivered an episode for a week or two. There would be this newsreel footage that led off there was an announcement that a new episode had come in, or there'd be ABC executives would be sitting on a loading dock waiting for the new cans of film to come in so they could show another episode. I mean, that kind of thing was a great acknowledgement of a very, very dear and sweet attachment that everyone working on the show had to the show and to the viewers who loved the show so much. And we understood it, and we felt everything and understood everything that they felt and what their investment was. So no one, I think, wanted to take that for granted or do anything less than honor to the utmost what the show meant to the viewers. And everyone was doing the best they could in the crazy circumstances of, they wanted us to make 22 episodes a year of this thing. We used to go around going, boy, wouldn't it be nice if someone invented a whole season of TV shows where all you had to do was 6 shows or 8 shows? We could do that. Well, of course, now that's what everyone does. And in a way, I was thinking that such was the attraction, the glue, that in a way, Moonlighting was a streaming show. It streamed once a week. But when the show came on, it sort of recognized what medium it was operating in, and that it was operating in a very intimate relationship to its viewers. It understood that it was a TV show, which of course was, I suppose The Office and shows of that sort kind of started to break they re-broke the fourth wall, and they did it so successfully and so well, and it was such a component of what they did that I think when we did it, it was more explosively delightful because it was this nice nod, or Bruce and Cybill would turn to the camera and nod, they get it, and the camera would go up and down. It was a very, very charmed relationship, and I'm very grateful for it.
You were on the set. Were you on the set a lot, Roger?
A fair amount, yeah, and we had tremendous directors, and I know you've spoken with Alan Arkish, and who was just a ball of fun and energy constantly, and Peter Werner, great director, and has been mentioned the
Robert
Do
Butler.
you have any memories of Briss and Cybill on the set filming?
yeah. I have I have. They were very, very professional about doing their jobs. They were, uh, I think, by and large, they were, you know, some people might disagree, but they were, off camera to deliver lines to the other person. It wasn't often the case that an AD or someone else had to deliver the lines to get the over the shoulder shot and reaction shot of one or the other of them. They, you know, I thought they recognized what was going on. They recognized the tiger that they had by the tail. They both delivered, just knocked the ball out of the ballpark performances. When you see what Bruce did, episode in and episode out, and what Cybill brought to it, which was this deep knowledge of film comedy and romantic comedic textures and tones and how to work off each other. They worked off each other, I thought, really brilliantly, and they had real respect for the other person and what they had achieved together. And it was exhausting at times. And I remember this isn't what. There's no talking in this scene, but it came at the end of one season where I remember we were all sitting off stage. Me and Bruce and Cybill were sitting there, and there were almost no words to say. We were all just fried, exhausted, but having delivered what we could deliver, and we were all cool. They were always. I always saw them being very professional with each other and appreciate each other.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had a chance to look at the link, but there was a TV ad in March of '89 that promised 7 new episodes and only 6 were delivered. Do you know anything about the unproduced episode? Or maybe that was the episode that you ended up not being able to do because the show was canceled?
I don't know anything about that. You can be assured that the person who failed to deliver episode 7 is lying at the bottom of the harbor right now. we took care of him. And but I look, if I told you what happened to those episodes, my life would be on the line. I'd be in danger. And so this is going to be something I'm not going to. I could send you maybe like a WhatsApp message or something like that. But if I told you, I'd be a dead man.
Okay. Well, we want you to live. Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Let's see. So since Moonlighting, what other TV shows, in your opinion, came close to capturing the Moonlighting magic, if any?
Well, so the magic, which is to say, drawing 30 million eyeballs on a regular basis, has been captured by some outstanding, brilliant shows. But, I'm not. I don't watch TV morning, noon, and night. Although morning and night, yeah. But to ask me to come up with a show in all this time that captured that ability, that charming ability that it had to break the fourth wall, to know that it was a TV show on so many levels, capture the attention of so many people. I don't want to sound like I'm making some exceptional case for it, but I don't know. Tell me, what show do you think might come close to that? I don't. I'm taxed. I'm taxed to think of another one that did that in such a refreshing, fun fashion. Really.
Well, I think Psych. Psych is truly inspired. It's obviously inspired by Moonlighting. Curtis was on there, and Cybill played the lead character's mom, and her name was Maddie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And the creator of the show, I heard his father worked on the set of Moonlighting. He was a security guard. So Steve Franks, I believe, is the creator of Psych. I think clearly you can see Moonlighting's influence on that show.
The thing is that also you can want to be like that show, but of course, anyone who ever worked on Moonlighting as a writer or in probably any capacity, if they were trying to write another project, I mean, talk about a cast contingent TV pilot. I mean, if you were making a TV pilot and they said, well, we want another Bruce and we want another Cybill for your TVs, you couldn't do it because no one could do what they did, which I think is noteworthy. You couldn't just find another terrific actor and like Bruce or like Cybill, and there many of them, as we have seen, God bless them, but no one necessarily had that unique capability that Bruce had, that strut, that shove your hands in your pockets, that walk, that look, or brought what Cybill brought to it, which was a lot, and in some sense, I think underestimated. After all, Cybill had an amazing long career arc. Has appeared in some of the greatest movies ever made, as we know. Mm-hmm. And you don't really have to explain why Cybill has been cast in a part. It's like that, and it's no one really has approached their level. And of course, I think that we're all mindful and saddened by what we know about Bruce's, what's been released about Bruce's status, and reflecting on these shows, we can only hope that the fact that it's being streamed again, which I think is a lovely thing, people get a chance to see Bruce doing this role, which how many other times did he do this kind of thing in the rest of his career? Not too, tell me when. Not too much.
Well, a lot of us think this was his best role because he got to do everything. He covered the comedy, the drama, the boxing, the dancing, the singing.
So good. So good. Yeah. Yeah.
The
absolutely.
romantic lead, everything.
The moment instead of a gun. Yeah. Playing opposite a woman instead of playing with guns. Yeah.
Well.
Are there any crazy or fun stories you could share about the obsession fans had about the show, also known as the Moonlighting phenomenon? I mean, Deborah Frank told us when she was in labor, the nurses, all they wanted to ask her was about the show, about Bruce and Cybill. I mean, do you remember any crazy stories out, off the set, on the set? Yeah.
Well, the craziest story for me is it always comes back to the phone starting to ring at 7 p.m. when the show went off the air back on the East Coast, and people going absolutely bonkers about what had just happened.
Yeah, that was when Maddie married Walter on the train. That was that episode. Yeah.
Yeah, and people went nuts.
And came back.
I mean, if we had been on the internet at that point, the internet would have collapsed. So it was that affinity that is most noteworthy and memorable and touching thing about the reaction that people had to the show. And of course, if you were working on that show, and the great privilege of working on it in TV, and especially on a show that's doing well, which it was, is the sense of people just getting some pats on the back for it. You know, that's fun. I like that show. Or my so-and-so watches that show. Or what happened in the last episode, what's going to happen in the next episode. And that allure that Glenn and Bruce and Cybill created, and let's not forget Jay Daniel, amazing producer, made, we actually said, well, we might want to have the train. She's having a weird nightmare. We might want to have the train crashed into the Bluemoon Detective Agency offices. And Jay, can we do that? And he said, yeah, okay, we could. I'll make that happen. We can arrange that somehow. And he got everything done, and a great presence, and everyone who worked on that show, but most particularly Glenn and Bruce and Cybill, who cooked it up and kept it going. That's a great thing, and something that as good as that, it's nice to see abides, continues to kind of affect people, and people hold it close to them in their hearts. And if you look at it now, it's still pretty. It's charming and twisting and crazy and fun, and all the things that people liked about it back then are reasons to like it now.
Yeah, we have a lot of new fans since the show been streaming. We're getting a lot of new fans in our group too, who've never seen the show, are like really into it. Writing fiction too. Yeah. So, Joy, we'll get into some of the specific questions next on the episodes.
Okay.
Number 21. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can answer it.
All right. So this is going back to Lady in the Iron Mask. Yeah. I loved that Dennis Christopher played Benjamin Wiley in The Lady in the Iron Mask. I love this lead role. He had a lead role in Breaking Away. Any memories you can share about that wacky episode? Any more memories?
Well, like I say, I was positive I was going to be fired after I handed in the script, because I really was like, this is the most cockeyed thing that I could ever think of or write down, or I'll be fired. But if I figured if I'm going to be fired for writing this down, all right, because it seems so entirely crazy to me, the notion of a client coming into the office and sitting there dressed like that.
Yeah.
I always thought to myself, how disrespectful could you possibly be, you idiot? Why are you writing? This is so disrespectful. And why you're forcing people to kind of laugh because this horrible thing happened, and yet, and I think it was kind of it, especially when the three of them were running around in the hotel, and some of those little sort of ending chase sequences were always fun to try to write and conceive of and choreograph, and we always seem to have a good one, and Camille that ended the season, that second season, I guess. It was with Whoopi Goldberg. She in mind. She was so. How great was she in that? And then that it broke the fourth wall at the end.
Yeah.
What was. That was just hilariously crazy.
Did you?
Yeah.
But there was go ahead, Joy.
Now, I just wanted to ask about the brilliant line that David gives Maddie. It'll keep to the fall. You wrote that, Roger?
Well, I could say that I wrote it, but if you could hook me up to a lie detector, I don't know if I would pass the test. It's the kind of thing that easily could have been written by Glenn on the set, there on the lot, putting that scene together. And then the thing I was going to say, Glenn always, always had the right great line. So I would like to take credit for that line, and in a completely unprovable and untruthful way, I'll take credit for that line. But I would probably came. Who knows? Maybe Bruce still came up with it. But it was really good, wasn't it? It was very tasty.
Brilliant.
Very tasty. Yeah.
What were you saying, Diana?
Well, in Camille, one of the questions was the breaking of the fourth wall. Did you have an ending for Camille in mind, or you couldn't come up with an ending and you just decided to do the chase? Is that because some people didn't know? Was there a real ending to that episode, or did you just didn't come up with one and did the fourth wall breakage chase?
We did have an ending to it, but I think we came up with a better ending than any other ending that we might have had, right? I mean, to go from to have them run out of the Bluemoon agency onto the lot, off the soundstage onto the lot, get those golf carts, zip around, go through the clothesline, and wind up those other costumes and outfits, and then have the prop department coming by and taking away the props, and having Judd Nelson walk out with Whoopi Goldberg like my job is done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty cool. That's really, I think, can't get any better than that. And the two of them drifting apart at the end and driving off in their cars and saying it'll keep to the fall. What great kind of pinpoint recognition that holds that moment for everybody and for them. We know we're a TV show, but we're real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's see. And
can I ask you one more thing about Lady in the Iron Mask? Did you write it in that they were going to slide in that soap? Because that was hilarious to end that.
I think I will take some credit for that. Yeah. But it was just, there were just so many weird and daffy things going on all the time, because that was the way. Again, Glenn was always. I never saw that before, and so I remember sitting in Glenn's office. I think I was the only person on the staff at that point when Debbie Frank and Carl Sauter came in to talk about the black and white episode, to pitch it. And, Carl, the late Carl Sauter, was a tremendous writer. They were a great writing team together. He'd put on his glasses and they would map something out and be very specific and detailed in outlining what their episode was going to be. But I don't think anyone knew at the outset, I don't think, that Orson Welles would introduce that episode. So I remember Orson Welles showing up, the word went out, Orson Welles is here, Orson Welles is here. And we all ran over to across the way to the neighboring soundstage. And Orson Welles was going to deliver his the monologue that introduces the episode. And Glenn directed that. And I think Glenn was it's the only time I think I've ever seen Glenn sort of slightly overawed, being in the presence of someone like that. So Glenn was so stunned that he forgot to say action. So Orson Welles was sitting there and ready to go. And I think Daniel had to whisper to Glenn, you gotta say action. And Glenn went, oh yeah, right, okay, action. And then Wells did that. There were always so many weird things coming and going in and out there. And that was such a great, wonderful experience to have all this. You didn't know what was going to happen next.
Going back to Atlas Belch, Mark Lynn Baker was fantastic in that episode.
Yeah.
Was the part written in mind for him? And was he already doing Perfect Strangers? And was this a guest spot on Moonlighting, a way for the network to promote Perfect Strangers?
I can't speak to that. I don't know. I know he was perfect for that part, wasn't he? He already had a very nice stage career going, and so he was already very well known to casting people, but he was really so good in that the scene in the bar. Where he delivers that speech about one time in 6 years he forgot to put the Rolodex away under lock and key, and what's going to happen to him now because that one time. And then there's a really good scene where they've gone to the garbage bin, and Bruce has got the shovels in his hand. He's trying to convince Phil, get out of the car, Phil. Get out of the car, Phil. And I'm not. I won't. Get out of the car, Phil. Another thing, Mark was great in that. Again, just as you think about it, just think of all the situations and guest stars that came into play with Bruce, and how they worked together really so well. Whether it was going to be comedic or heavy, or Bruce was going to have to kind of try to lead the other guy by the nose, like he had to lead Mark Lynn Baker, or deal with a romantic interest that Maddie might have with someone like Mark Harmon. To think about how carefully crafted all of Bruce's acting chops came to bear on working in all kinds of situations with other people that he was cast to work with. So when I look at that episode, then Mark Lynn Baker, there's probably a little bit of piece of me in Mark Lynn Baker there. Like any employee, right? You did one thing wrong, and now you're screwed. But it turns out you're sitting in the bar getting drunk in the middle of the morning next to a guy who is in the same boat as you, only he's David Addison, and he's going to save your bacon. The two of them were really quite good together, I thought. And the scene where, again, I'm just riffing a little bit off the top of my head. The scene where David thinks he's solved the case, and he walks into what's his face's office, and the guy turns around and says, I'm going to call the cops on you. I'm going to have you arrested for this lame ass excuse, attempt to extort me. Bruce is just pretty delicious as you see his emotions turn around and have him have to get out of that office in one piece before being arrested. Bruce was so really good at that kind of thing. Really good. And being funny while he was doing it too, right? Pretty amazing.
Okay, and I guess there's one more episode question. You weren't credited with writing the episode, but a fan would like to ask, were you on the set when Stanley Don and Sandra Bergman for the episode Big Man on Mulberry Street?
I wasn't. I'm sorry to say, I wasn't. But how great was that? So many. That was an episode. I think Karen Hall wrote that episode.
Yes.
There have been so many. Karen's sister, Barbara Hall, has an illustrious career. Ron and Jeff, Chick Egley, Carrie Aaron.
Yeah.
These are, immensely talented writers who wrote so many terrific episodes, and it was always very delicious to have Debbie and Carl come and join us because they always had so many good ideas, and you could work with them. It was really a lot of fun.
And and now to wrap this up, a question. After Moonlighting, you wrote a book called A Place to Fall.
Yeah.
And I guess a fan was asking that that it might have references to Moonlighting or the inspiration, or what can you tell us about that book?
The closest, I keep coming back to that incident of, maybe it doesn't resonate now the way it did then, because we're all on our phones, and if something happens, you immediately hear about it from 10,000 other people, and you get DMs, and you're scrolling through it. But at that point in time, you're on in the offices next to Stage 20 at Fox. I mean, you can't get on the lot. The office phone numbers are known to only the people on the cast and crew list. And so the idea that there would be this, starting at the second that the final credits went on, there'd be this avalanche, this torrent of phone calls. The phones would start, we had phones that rang. They rang, ring, 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 ring. That's how the phone sounded, I think. But they started jingling and jangling and ringing off the hook. That was just a really startling reminder of the connection and the power that this fictional world has on the world at large. And so that has always resonated with me. And so I think I had that sort of a scene in my book when people were sort of miffed about what had transpired in the book. And, it's a high demand job. It's many, many rewards. It taxes you a lot. You need to come to an understanding of trying to put every person working on that show from top to bottom in the best possible position to succeed. And if things go south, it's your responsibility, and you have to own it. And so, I think the book is a little bit of a reflection about that, but mostly trying to reflect on probably something that's more or less something that we might take for granted now. I mean, way back, even before I was born, there was a radio show that Orson Welles did in which he portrayed an invasion from Mars, right? And it was broadcast as if there was an actual invasion happening. And a lot of people freaked out in places like New Jersey and elsewhere and sort of got in their cars because they thought something was actually happening. And I don't know why I'm making this comparison to what happened at Moonlighting when the phone started jingling like that. But people have that connection. Now we take it for granted. No, take it for granted is probably the right word, but it's implanted now that we can connect almost at any time. Back then, it was quite a precedent, I think. So,
and going back to connecting, on a last question, can you talk a little bit more about that the show is finally streaming and what that means to you?
Well, I have to say that it's a lovely thing, and when I have had the chance to go back and reflect and look at some of these things and what Bruce and Cybill did, and what Glenn created. I'm I'm once again pleased, I mean, for the most part, pleased and quite delighted that people can look at the show and see the show and appreciate Bruce and sense and taste what kind of incendiary chemistry they were together, and that we tried to do the best we could to kind of explore that and navigate that. And I think it's, you can, I can look at I've forgotten some of these things, right? But when you go back and look at something like the Rona Barrett, those kinds of things where we know that that we're a TV show, but it's okay. We're all going to have fun with it. I find that really refreshing, and I kind of try to, and I think to myself, sort of along the lines of what you had asked me previously, what other show is like that, and I scratch my head a little bit because I wonder, has there been? And so I appreciate seeing this. There's something really lovely about it. I really deeply appreciate it. So I'm quite happy that it's streaming now, so people can see it. I think there was some lovely things there. Really lovely things. Fun, everything, right there. Very good. One of the best shows that's ever been on television.
Oh yeah, it is considered. I think it's in the top 100 best television shows in history. Mm-hmm.
Well, you said
Absolutely.
Yeah. Really cool. Yeah.
Groundbreaking. Well, thank you so much. We'll be doing a live watch of Atlas Belched right after this live stream. And if you want to stick around, there's a discussion in our Facebook group.
Thank you so much, Roger. It was a pleasure. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for doing it.
Fans, for the community.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.